In the summer of 1942, Hitler kicked off Operation Blue, aiming to grab the oil-rich Caucasus and deal a serious blow to the Soviet war effort. But there was one major obstacle: Stalingrad. This city wasn't just a dot on the map, it was a symbol of defiance, a name that haunted Hitler. For him, capturing Stalingrad wasn't just about territory, it was a personal challenge, a way to crush Stalin's spirit. The stakes were high, and the battle that unfolded would change the course of the war. Stalingrad became a fierce battleground, where every street and building turned into a fierce fight for survival. It was a clash of wills, and the world was watching. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, was charging toward the Volga River, convinced that they'd take Stalingrad in just a few days. They were riding high on their earlier victories, but they had no idea what was coming. Stalin wasn't about to let his city fall without a fight. He issued the chilling order: not one step back. This wasn't just a slogan, it was a rallying cry for the Red Army. They dug in, prepared for a brutal defense that would turn the tide of the war. The streets of Stalingrad would soon become a battleground like no other, where every inch was fought for with blood and grit. The stakes were high, and the world was watching. Stalingrad was more than just a city. It was an industrial fortress. Picture this: factories pumping out weapons, railways crisscrossing, and the mighty Volga River flowing right through it. But here's the twist: it wasn't just a stronghold, it was a trap. The Soviets turned every building into a fortress, every street into a battleground. Imagine fighting for every inch, where a simple corner could be a sniper's nest or a hiding spot. The rubble became a weapon, and the city itself was a relentless enemy. Stalingrad wasn't just a fight for territory, it was a brutal test of will, where survival meant turning the very landscape into a weapon of war. By August, the city was a shell of its former self, reduced to rubble by relentless German bombers. Thousands of civilians lost their lives in the chaos. But oddly enough, those ruins turned out to be a blessing in disguise for the defenders. Soviet snipers found perfect hiding spots in the shadows, blending in with the debris. You could hear the sharp crack of their rifles echoing through the broken walls, while machine guns rattled in the distance. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, where every corner held a new danger. The destruction, while tragic, gave the defenders a fighting chance in a city that had become a battlefield. The Germans rolled into the city, and let me tell you, it was anything but a walk in the park. Progress, slow as molasses. Every single block felt like a fortress, and each building turned into a battleground. It was like a twisted game of chess, but with lives on the line. Room by room, they had to clear it out, and it wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was pure slaughter. The chaos, the fear, the desperation. It changed the very nature of what we think of as war. It was raw, brutal, and it left scars that would last a lifetime. Stalingrad wasn't just a battlefield, it was a testament to human resilience. Civilians caught in the chaos didn't just hide, they fought back. Women took on roles you wouldn't believe, carrying ammunition to the front lines, showing that courage knows no gender. And the kids, they weren't playing games. They were digging trenches, doing their part to defend their home. This city became a symbol of defiance against overwhelming odds. It's incredible to think that in the face of destruction, ordinary people transformed into heroes, proving that when survival is on the line, everyone can rise to the occasion. Stalingrad is more than a place. It's a story of grit and determination. By September, the battle for Stalingrad was absolutely intense. The Germans had taken control of most of the city, but the Soviets weren't backing down. They held the riverbanks, which was crucial for their defense. Picture this: Stalin was relentless, sending reinforcements across the Volga, all while under heavy fire. It was a high-stakes game of survival. The Soviets were fighting tooth and nail, determined to push back against the German advance. Every inch of ground was a fierce struggle, and the tension was palpable. It was a turning point in the war, with both sides knowing that victory here could change everything. By mid-September 1942, Stalingrad had transformed from a bustling city into a haunting graveyard of steel and stone. Imagine German troops trudging through the ruins, every corner hiding a sniper, every step a potential mine. It was chaos, with every building turned into a fortress and every street morphing into a killing field. The fighting was brutal. Soldiers had to be on high alert, navigating a landscape where danger lurked behind every shattered wall. Stalingrad wasn't just a battle. It was a relentless struggle for survival, where the city itself became a weapon in the hands of those fighting for their lives. The Red October steel factory turned into a chaotic battlefield, where German infantry charged in, expecting a quick victory, but they were met with fierce resistance from Soviet defenders who had turned the factory into a maze of death. Picture this: soldiers hiding behind massive machinery, sniping from catwalks, and using underground tunnels to outmaneuver their enemies. It was industrial warfare at its most brutal, claustrophobic, and relentless. Every corner held a surprise. Every shadow could be a sniper. The factory, once a symbol of industry, became a grim testament to the horrors of war, where survival meant adapting to the chaos of steel and smoke. Snipers ruled the rooftops during the brutal Battle of Stalingrad, and one name stood out above the rest: Vasily Zaitsev. This guy was a true legend. A hunter from the Urals, he took out over 200 German soldiers, turning the ruins of the city into his personal hunting ground. Zaitsev wasn't just a marksman, he was a symbol of Soviet resilience, showing the world that even in the darkest times, courage and skill could shine through. His story isn't just about numbers. It's about the spirit of a nation fighting back against overwhelming odds. Zaitsev's legacy lives on, reminding us all of the power of determination and the impact one person can have in the face of adversity. The Germans rolled in with flamethrowers, grenades, and those massive tanks that could crush anything in their path. But the Soviets, they weren't backing down. They fought back with Molotov cocktails, knives, and a determination that was almost palpable. Picture this: hand-to-hand combat breaking out in the tight confines of basements, stairwells, and even sewer tunnels. It was gritty, it was raw, and it was a fight for survival. The Soviets turned their desperation into a weapon, using every inch of their environment to their advantage. It wasn't just about firepower, it was about heart and sheer will. In those dark places, the spirit of resistance shone brighter than any tank. The Volga River was more than just a river. It was a lifeline during some of the toughest times. Every night Soviet reinforcements braved the icy waters, crossing under heavy fire. Imagine that: soldiers fighting for their lives, some drowning in the depths, while others fell victim to enemy bullets before they even reached the shore. Yet despite the chaos and the losses, they kept coming. It was a relentless push, driven by desperation and determination. Each crossing was a testament to their resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope can flow like the river itself. German commanders were caught completely off guard. They thought they'd waltz in for a quick victory, but instead they found themselves in a nightmare. Picture this: their troops, once confident, now faced mounting casualties and a crumbling morale. The battle lines shifted, and the reality of their situation hit hard. They were trapped, surrounded by fierce resistance, and every plan they had seemed to unravel. It was chaos, confusion, and a stark reminder that war doesn't always go as planned. The dream of a swift conquest turned into a harsh lesson in the unpredictability of conflict. I remember reading about the relentless demands from the top during World War II. Total victory was the mantra, and General Paulus was caught in the middle of it all. His Sixth Army was freezing, starving, and slowly dying in the brutal winter. Imagine being in his shoes, knowing your men were suffering while you had to follow orders that seemed increasingly insane. Meanwhile, the Soviets were gearing up for something huge, ready to unleash their might. It was a ticking time bomb, and Paulus had to hold the line, even as the situation became more desperate. The tension was palpable, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. It's a stark reminder of the harsh realities of war and the heavy burden of command. For 2 months, the battle raged on, and let me tell you, it was chaos. One minute, you'd see a flag waving from a rooftop, and the next, it was gone, replaced by another. Entire blocks changed hands like a game of hot potato. One moment you're defending your turf, and the next you're running for cover. The air, thick with smoke, blood, and a sense of desperation that clung to everyone like a bad smell. You could almost taste the tension. People were fighting, not just for land, but for their lives, their homes. It was a brutal reminder of how quickly everything can change, and how resilience can shine even in the darkest of times. By November 1942, the German Sixth Army was really feeling the pressure. They had captured most of Stalingrad, but the Volga River, still out of reach. It's wild to think about how stretched they were. Supply lines were thin, and morale was dipping. Meanwhile, the Soviets were quietly gearing up for a counteroffensive, setting the stage for a classic trap. They knew the Germans were overextended, and they were ready to pounce. This was a pivotal moment in the war, where the tide was about to turn. The stakes were high, and the outcome would change everything. On November 19th, 1942, the Red Army kicked off Operation Uranus, and let me tell you, it was a game-changer. They targeted the weak spots in the Romanian and Hungarian flanks, catching the Germans off guard. Within just a few days, the tables turned dramatically. Imagine this, 300,000 German troops, completely surrounded and trapped. It was a massive blow to the Axis powers, showing just how quickly fortunes can shift in war. The Soviets seized the moment, turning the tide in a way that would echo through history. It's wild to think how a single operation could change the course of the Eastern Front so dramatically. So picture this. Hitler's got General Paulus in Stalingrad, and he's barking orders. Hold the city at all costs. No breakout, no surrender. It sounds heroic, right? But here's the kicker. The Luftwaffe promised to resupply them by air. Easy peasy, right? Well, not quite. The weather turned nasty, and Soviet artillery was relentless. Those planes couldn't get through. Supplies dwindled, morale plummeted, and the once mighty German forces found themselves trapped. It's a classic case of stubborn leadership meeting harsh reality. In the end, it wasn't just the Soviets who brought them down. It was the impossible expectations and the elements working against them. Conditions inside the pocket were nothing short of hellish. Imagine temperatures plummeting to -30°C. It was brutal. Food supplies dwindled fast. We were running on empty. And the field hospitals, they were freezing, and the wounded were suffering. First we turned to the horses. It felt desperate, but we had to survive. Then it got worse. We started eating rats. You'd think it couldn't get any lower. But soon we were left with nothing. Just the cold and the fight to stay alive. It was a fight against the elements and hunger, and every day felt like a battle for survival. The Soviets were tightening the noose around Stalingrad, and it was brutal. Artillery was pounding the city relentlessly, day and night. German units were cut off, isolated, and systematically destroyed. You'd think that would be enough to make General Paulus throw in the towel, right? But no, he held his ground. It's wild to think about. Despite the chaos and destruction, he refused to surrender. It's a testament to the stubbornness of leadership in the face of overwhelming odds. The battle became a symbol of resilience, but also of the tragic cost of war. Stalingrad wasn't just a fight for territory, it was a fight for survival, and Paulus was determined to see it through, no matter the consequences. January 31st, 1943, marked a pivotal moment in World War II. General Paulus, the commander of the German Sixth Army, surrendered at Stalingrad, becoming the first German field marshal to be captured alive. Can you imagine the shockwaves that sent through the Nazi ranks? Hitler was absolutely furious. He even blamed Paulus for the defeat. But let's be real, the battle was already lost. Stalingrad was a turning point, shifting the momentum in favor of the Allies. It wasn't just a military defeat. It was a massive blow to German morale. The surrender of such a high-ranking officer was a clear signal that the tide was turning. The war was far from over, But this moment, it was a game changer. Imagine being one of the 300,000 Axis troops trapped in Stalingrad. Out of that massive force, only 91,000 were captured when the Soviet counteroffensive hit. And here's the kicker. Fewer than 6,000 of those guys ever made it back home. The rest, they just vanished into the snow, lost to history. It's a haunting thought, really. The brutal winter, the relentless fighting, and the sheer scale of despair. Stalingrad wasn't just a battle, it was a turning point, a grim reminder of the war's harsh realities. Those who didn't return, they became part of the chilling silence of the Russian winter, their stories buried beneath the snow. Stalingrad was more than just a battle. It was a game changer. Picture this. The Nazis, who seemed unstoppable, were finally met with a fierce resistance. The myth of their invincibility shattered. The Red Army, once on the defensive, flipped the script and went on the offensive. This wasn't just a fight for a city, it was a fight for survival and a turning point in World War II. The Soviets held their ground, and in doing so, they ignited a spark of hope that would rally the Allies. Stalingrad marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany, proving that even the mightiest can fall. The cost was unimaginable. Nearly 2 million people dead, wounded or missing. A city, once vibrant, now reduced to ashes. But from that devastation, something incredible happened. People rallied together, refusing to be defeated. That spirit ignited a new momentum. The tide of war turned, and hope began to rise from the rubble. It's wild to think how, in the darkest moments, resilience can shine the brightest. Communities rebuilt, lives were transformed, and a new chapter started. It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, we can find strength and forge ahead. Stalingrad wasn't just another battle, it was a turning point. Picture this, a city under siege, where every street corner became a battleground. The Soviets didn't just fight for territory, they fought for survival, for their families, and for their very way of life. This wasn't just about winning, it was about sending a message. The world watched as the Red Army held their ground against the Nazi onslaught. It was here that the tide began to turn. Stalingrad became a symbol of sacrifice and resistance, proving that Hitler could be beaten. It ignited hope across nations, showing that tyranny could be challenged. This wasn't just a victory, it was a rallying cry for freedom.